I never expected my life to turn out like this. I never thought I'd be fighting to keep something I built with my own hands, my own sacrifices, from the very people who once told me I'd never amount to anything. I never thought the enemy would wear familiar faces. But here we are. I was 19 when they kicked me out. It wasn't some dramatic, yelling, door-slamming moment. It was quiet, cold, and cruel. I had just come out to my parents, trembling, hopeful, stupidly optimistic that She just looked down at her coffee and said nothing. That silence hurt more than anything. So I left. No savings. No real plan. Just a few clothes and a second-hand laptop. I couch surfed for a while, picked up shifts at a diner, took online gigs writing content and tutoring. I was scared out of my mind, but that fear turned into determination. I refused to become the failure they were waiting for. I refused to give them that satisfaction. Over the years, I clawed my way towards stability. I rented a tiny studio, the kind of place where the kitchen is basically a sink and a microwave. I worked two jobs, barista by day, delivery driver by night. On weekends, I studied. Online courses. Certifications. Little by little, I built a resume. Then a freelance career. Then a proper job in tech. Then another, better one. By the time I was 27, I had good credit, a decent salary, and enough for a down payment. That house. It wasn't fancy, but to me, it was a castle. A modest two-bedroom with peeling paint, broken gutters, and a yard full of weeds. But it was mine. I renovated it bit by bit. I painted the walls myself. I laid tile in the kitchen, sanded and stained the wood floors. I planted flowers in the yard. Every inch of that space had my fingerprints on it, blood, sweat, tears, and all. 4 years, I didn't speak to my parents. They made no effort to contact me either. But as soon as they heard I'd bought a house, suddenly they were interested. They started calling, leaving voicemails. My mother even sent a birthday card for the first time in nearly a decade. I was suspicious, but I missed them. Against my better judgment, I let them back in slowly. It started with coffee. Then dinner. Then invitations to holidays. They played nice, talked about how proud they were of my independence, and how it must be so rewarding to see all your hard work pay off. I wanted to believe it was sincere. I really did. Then came Greg. Greg is my younger brother by 3 years. The golden child. The one they coddled and protected while I was pushed out. He was always the obedient one, quiet, agreeable, and careful never to challenge their worldview. We weren't close growing up, and after I left, we barely spoke. But one day, out of nowhere, he showed up at my door. He was polite. A little awkward. Said he was just passing through and thought he'd say hi. I made coffee. We talked. Then he started coming around more often. Talking about how tough things were, how expensive rent had gotten, how burned out he was working for a company that paid him too little to live on. I listened, offered sympathy. What else could I do? My parents started hinting soon after. Casual at first. It's so nice that you and Greg are reconnecting. You've got that second bedroom just sitting there. Wouldn't it be nice to have family close by? I saw where it was going. I said no. Politely. Firmly. Repeatedly. I explained that this house was my space. My safe haven. That I loved my brother, but I needed boundaries. My father didn't take it well. He said I was being selfish. That family helps family. That I owed it to Greg after abandoning the family for so long. My mother cried. Said she thought I'd grown past all that anger. I wanted to scream. They had kicked me out. They had disowned me. And now, because I'd done the impossible, because I had built a life from nothing, they wanted to pretend none of it happened and expected me to sacrifice it for their favorite. Greg, for his part, was passive. He never outright asked to move in, but he also never defended me. He just stood there while they guilted me, shrugging, looking uncomfortable, saying things like I don't want to cause trouble or it's just temporary, I guess. That's when I realized something. He wasn't just a victim of their manipulation. He was complicit. Whether consciously or not, he expected me to make the sacrifice. Because that's what I'd always done. Then came the letter.official.cold. A proposed amendment to my property deed. It suggested placing the house into a family trust, where Greg and I would be co-beneficiaries. My father had consulted a lawyer. They were trying to strong-arm me into giving him partial ownership. Their justification. Greg needs stability. You have it. We're just trying to ensure fairness. Fairness. As if they'd ever treated me with an ounce of it. I didn't respond. I blocked their numbers. I didn't answer Greg's emails. That should have been the end of it. But then they showed up at my house. My own parents. On my lawn. With Greg in tow. They brought another copy of the letter. Tried to hand it to me. Told me to be reasonable. That family comes first. That this doesn't have to be a fight. I told them to leave. I told them that if they didn't, I'd call the police. My mother broke down crying. My father's face turned red with rage. Greg looked at me like I was the villain. But I didn't flinch. After they left, I sat on my porch and cried harder than I had in years. Not because I regretted standing up for myself, but because I was mourning the final death of the fantasy. The idea that maybe, just maybe, one day they'd love me the way I needed them to. They don't love me. They love what I can give them. They love what I've built. But not me. And that's the thing. I built this life without them. Every dollar earned. Every repair made. Every sleepless night. Every tear. Every triumph. This house is more than just walls and floors. It is proof. Proof that I survived. That I thrived. That I rose above the ashes they left me in. And I'll be damned if I let them take it from me. So no. Greg doesn't get the guest room. He doesn't get a key. He doesn't get to play victim while reaping the rewards of my resilience. And my parents. They can stay on the outside, where they left me all those years ago. I may be alone. But I am free. And this house. This home. It's mine. They didn't take the hint. Not really. A week after that last confrontation, a neighbor mentioned they saw Greg circling the block in his car a few times. Just driving slow. Watching. Maybe I was being paranoid, but it gave me chills. I started locking the gate at night, something I hadn't bothered to do for years. I changed the locks. I installed a camera over the door and to more facing the front and backyard. I didn't want confrontation, but I wasn't about to wait around and hope they stayed away. Then came the emails, long, rambling, self-righteous essays from my mother mostly. We're just trying to protect Greg. He's struggling. And you're shutting him out. You've changed. You used to be so compassionate. They were crafted to poke every old wound. She even brought up my childhood, said I always took more than my fair share of attention, even when I was the one getting punished, grounded, told to be quiet, to stop making things harder. She wrote things like, "This is what family does," as if family had ever meant safety to me. As if family meant anything other than a lifelong gaslight. Greg tried texting once more. We could have figured something out. But you burned the bridge. That one hurt. Not because of need or logic or fairness. But because they always would. Because I stopped being convenient. Because I stopped saying yes. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. But something strange happened after I folded that letter and tucked it away in a drawer I rarely open. Something shifted. It was like a final door closed, and for the first time, I didn't feel trapped behind it. I felt safe on the other side. There's power in refusal. I remembered the silence when I sent messages home asking if I could just come back even for a little while and getting no response. Where were they then? Where was their compassion when I needed it most? I clawed my way out of a hole they dug for me. I built something solid, stable, peaceful. And now that it's convenient, they want to move back in metaphorically and literally and rewrite the past. Pretend it was all just some phase. Pretend we're one big, healing family. But healing doesn't come through entitlement. It doesn't come through manipulation dressed up as concern. The hardest part isn't saying no. It's staying no. Because a piece of me, the child that still hopes for their approval, their warmth, their acceptance, still wants to believe things could change. That if I gave in just a little, they'd finally see me. Really see me. But they won't. Not unless I'm giving them something. The emails stopped eventually. The voicemails dwindled. Greg didn't drive by again, at least not that I saw. It's been quiet now for a few months. Not peaceful because the grief still lingers, but quiet enough to think. Quiet enough to breathe. I've started a new garden bed out back. I'm growing vegetables this time, something nourishing, something alive. I pull weeds on the weekends. I built a little bench from reclaimed wood. Sometimes I sit out there with coffee in the mornings, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the wind through the trees. It's small, it's simple, and it's mine. Some days, I still feel angry. Some days, I feel guilty. But most days, I feel proud. I stood up for myself. I broke the cycle. I chose peace over performance, boundaries over blood, truth over fantasy. They say family is everything. But that's a myth designed to keep people like me compliant. Family is not everything. But dignity is. Freedom is. Home, the one I built brick by brick, without their help, is. I won't apologize for surviving. And I sure as hell won't apologize for keeping what I earned. There's a strange ache that comes with setting boundaries, an ache no one talks about. You expect relief. You expect empowerment. And yes, those feelings come, but so does the quiet grief. The silence after the storm. The space where love should have been, but never truly was. That grief still visits me sometimes. Usually in the quieter hours, when the world feels still and my mind wanders. It asks questions I can't always answer. What if they were right? What if I'd said yes? Would it have been easier to just go along with it, to keep the peace, to be the good child for once? But then I remember what peace really means. Peace isn't giving people access to you simply because they share your DNA. Peace isn't turning your life into a sacrifice for people who only show up when they want something. Peace isn't compliance. Real peace comes when you finally look in the mirror and say, I chose myself. And I'm okay with that. A couple of weeks ago, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, my father's, sharp and measured. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the counter for 3 days while I debated what I'd even do with it. Burn it. Toss it. Read it just to confirm what I already knew. On the 4th day, I opened it. It was short. Blunt. A paragraph, at most. You've made your choice. That's clear. Don't expect us to understand it. You're still our child, but you've chosen your path. I hope you're happy with it. Greg is staying with us now. He's family. We take care of our own. That last line. We take care of our own. As if I never counted. As if they hadn't chosen a side long before I ever got the chance to choose mine. But there it was, the confirmation. They picked him. Again. Not because it was true, but because for a split second, I wanted to believe I was the bad guy. That maybe I had been too harsh. That maybe, deep down, I was as cold and bitter as they always said I'd become. But then I remembered. I remembered sleeping on a friend's couch with a backpack and $28 to my name. I remembered crying in a bathroom stall after being rejected from yet another job. I remembered going to bed hungry so I could save enough to make rent. There's power in reclaiming your story. And there's power in remembering that you don't owe anyone access to your healing. I've started hosting small dinners again. Just a few close friends, warm food, music playing low in the background. Laughter echoing through the space I made mine. These people, they've become my chosen family. No strings. No guilt. Just mutual care, shared history, and space to breathe. I'm learning that love doesn't have to come with a price. It doesn't have to be begged for. It doesn't have to be bartered. Sometimes, love is just someone showing up with a bottle of wine and asking how your week went. Sometimes it's someone helping you repot a plant, or fix a leaky faucet, or sit with you on the porch in silence when you can't find the words. That's the kind of family I want. Not the kind that takes. Not the kind that manipulates. But the kind that sees you, fully, and says, you are enough. Just like this. My house still stands solid quiet. Full of memories I chose to create. And every time I walk through the front door, I feel it the life I've carved out of the stone they once buried me under. I don't know if my parents will ever truly understand what they lost. Maybe one day Greg will wake up and see it too. Or maybe not. That's no longer my burden to carry. I didn't win the lottery. I didn't stumble into success. I built this life, brick by brick, hour by hour, heartbreak by heartbreak. And they won't take it. Not now. Not ever. Sometimes I wonder if they tell the story differently to others if, in their version, I'm the selfish one, the bitter one, the lost child who turned their back on a loving family. I can almost hear my mother's voice, dripping with that soft, performative sadness. We tried everything. We just don't know what happened to them. Maybe that's how they cope. Maybe that's how they sleep at night. But I've stopped twisting myself into knots to correct their narrative. People who want to believe the worst of you will always find a reason to. And people who love you don't need convincing. I've learned that healing is not loud. It's not a moment of triumphant applause or some Instagrammable milestone. It's quiet. It's slow. It's planting herbs in a windowsill and remembering to water them. It's choosing not to reply to a cruel message. It's waking up in a space that feels safe, where your heart doesn't sink the moment you open your eyes. It's not glamorous, but it's real. Some days I still feel that old weight creep in the sense of not being good enough, not being lovable, not being wanted. The lies they planted run deep, and healing doesn't always rip them out by the root. Sometimes, it just teaches you not to water them anymore. I still dream about them sometimes. Not the good kind of dreams. The kind where I'm standing in a room with them and I've lost my voice. Where I'm explaining myself over and over and no one listens. Where my father folds his arms, my mother turns away, and Greg shrugs as if to say, "What did you expect?" But then I wake up. And the silence in the house is my own. And I breathe again. I get up. I put the kettle on. I feed the cat I adopted last spring. His name is Oliver. He's clingy and a little weird, but he curls against me when I read and chirps when I sing off-key in the kitchen. He doesn't care about my past. Just that I come home. Sometimes I sit at the kitchen table and think about what it took to get here. Not just the money or the time or the labor, but the choice. The decision to walk away from what was expected of me. The courage to build a life without approval. The strength to say no. Not like this. Not again, because that's the truth no one wants to talk about. Sometimes, to protect your future, you have to become the villain in someone else's story. And that's okay. Let them call me selfish. Let them say I turned my back. Let them paint me as cold or ungrateful or cruel. I know the truth. I know what it cost. I know what I survived. They had the chance to stand beside me, to grow, to heal with me. They chose control. I chose peace. That peace isn't perfect. It gets lonely sometimes. It hurts in unexpected ways when I pass a family laughing in a park, or when friends talk about Sunday dinners with their parents like it's the most natural thing in the world. But I've stopped envying what I never had. I've stopped bleeding to earn a place at a table that never had a seat for me. Instead, I'm building my own table. Slowly. With patience. With people who show up, who love without conditions, who know the real me and choose me anyway. I think about the future now. Something I used to avoid. I wonder what it will look like in 10 years. This house, this life, this self I'm still learning to love. I think about the quiet strength it takes to raise yourself. To grow into your own parent. To hold your own hand through the dark and say, we made it. We're still making it. And we're doing just fine. There's a kind of beauty that lives in the aftermath, after the storm, after the shouting, after the tears have dried. A quiet, or a kind of beauty that no one teaches you how to hold. The kind you have to earn. I've learned to cherish that silence. Not the silence of being ignored or cast aside, but the kind that follows peace. The silence that says, "You're safe now. You don't have to keep fighting." I used to think peace would feel like celebration, like some loud victorious moment. But it doesn't. It feels like a deep breath you didn't realize you'd been holding for years. Sometimes I catch myself doing normal things, folding laundry, taking out the trash, fixing a loose door hinge, and I just stop and watch myself. Not because those tasks are special, but because I'm doing them for me. In my space. On my time. With no one hovering over my shoulder, no one waiting to pull the rug out from under me. There's power in that. There's life in that. When I think about everything I endured, everything I was told I'd never do, never be, I feel both anger and awe. Anger that it was ever said to me. Awe that I proved it all wrong. Because they never saw this version of me coming. The version who owns their scars. The version who knows their worth. The version who can say no and mean it. The version who can love deeply, but selectively. The version who doesn't chase love anymore but welcomes it only when it's real. They still exist out there, somewhere, in their little bubble. Maybe they've moved on, or maybe they still talk about me like I'm the great betrayal in their story. I'll never really know, and I've made peace with that. Closure is a luxury you rarely get from people who cause the wound. Instead, I've written my own. Not with revenge or anger, but with resilience. With choice. With the daily decision to live for something more than survival. To live with softness again. To believe, even now, in better. The house has changed over time, like I have. New curtains. Brighter paint. A gallery wall of moments that matter. Friend smiles frozen in photographs. A print that says you do not owe anyone the parts of you they tried to erase. That one makes me pause every time I pass it. Not because I need the reminder, but because it feels like a truth I fought so hard to reach. I've begun writing again, more consistently. Essays, poetry, letters I'll never send. The words don't bleed out like they used to. They flow gentle sure whole. I think that's what healing really is, not the absence of pain, but the ability to speak without shaking. There are still scars. They don't fade the way people promise they will. But they don't hurt anymore, not the way they used to. Now, they just remind me you survived. You made it out. You kept going. That's enough. That's more than enough. One day, if I ever have children or even just a younger person who looks up to me, I'll tell them this: you don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't have to be broken to be worthy. And you are allowed to outgrow people, even the ones who gave you life. I don't know what comes next. Maybe a new job, a new city. Maybe love, maybe more solitude. I'm open to it all but desperate for none of it. Because I've already built the foundation. I've already proven the most important thing, that I can be whole without them. That I can build, protect, and live a life rooted in truth. That I can choose peace, over and over, no matter who it offends. They tried to take it, but this life, this home, this self, it's not theirs to take. Not now, not ever.